Welcome back to my vessel of light. Tonight we walk with a quiet mystery, a second key that appears without explanation, and a door that refuses to be only wood or metal or habit. She noticed it while locking the front door after rain. Two similar keys on the ring, one slightly brighter as if newly made, no label, no memory of cutting it, a patient riddle. She tried the usual locks without forcing. Front door turned the same. Mailbox ignored the extra tooth pattern. Window latches did not care about keys. The new metal waited without apology on her palm. On the kitchen table, the key caught lamplight and made a small moon. She listed every door she could remember. The list was short. The feeling this mattered was not short. She opened a drawer where someday objects gather, a ribbon, a receipt, an old photograph, a tiny envelope without stamp. She placed the second key beside them and felt the room slow down. A thought arrived without sound. Maybe the key is not for wood. Maybe it is for a kind of timing. A door inside decisions. A hinge that moves only when kindness leads. She walked the hallway touching frames lightly. Memory softened its tone. The closet lock did not fit. The cabinet turned halfway and paused, like someone considering a yes without rushing toward it. She breathed and turned again with less urgency. The cabinet yielded like a friend waking. Inside sat boxes labeled for later. Later had grown heavy. The key did not open wood, it opened willingness. She chose one box and found a note to herself, a tiny fabric pouch, and a photograph where her smile worked hard. The pouch held a charmed shape like a small doorway. The note was simple: return to morning walks. Choose tea without distraction once a day. Forgive a name without ceremony. She placed the charm near the second key and felt the table become a compass. She tried the balcony door that always stuck in colder months. The second key turned the handle with surprising ease. Not magic, alignment, as if the house relaxed before she finished asking permission. Outside, the rain had cleaned the air. Plants along the railing breathed easier like her. She watered them with presence instead of apology. The second key warmed slightly in her pocket like patient sunlight. She wrote in her phone 3 gentle doors to open this week, a walk before messages, a call answered tomorrow thoughtfully, a bedtime chosen by her body. The list felt possible and honest. The next afternoon, she visited a locksmith with kind eyes and slow movements. He examined the second key and said it matched a common brand and an uncommon cat, both familiar and personal at once. He asked no questions she could not answer, simply handed the key back with a nod that sounded like timing. On the street, her steps learned a quieter pace and her shoulders learned softness. At home, she cleaned the small museum cabinet of postponed kindnesses. The second key fit the drawer where old letters lived. The drawer opened to reveal an envelope addressed in her own handwriting. She did not remember writing it. Inside lay a short message about leaving doors cracked for air, and a tiny metal tag engraved with a date from years ago, a beginning unfinished. She placed the tag on the keyring beside the second key. The metal pieces sounded like a decision, small, bright, and ready. She whispered gratitude without words, and the room understood anyway. Days unfolded with new rhythm. Whenever a choice felt narrow, she held the second key and asked what door inside needs opening. The answer arrived as breath, as water, as a first step. She visited the basement storage room with its particular smell of dust and soap. The second key did not fit the padlock, but it fit her patience. She sorted boxes and returned unneeded weight. Among the lids, she found a tiny tin with a folded map of the neighborhood. Someone had circled a bench by the river, the same bench she used to visit in early spring. She walked there at golden hour and sat where the map suggested. The second key rested warm in her hand, not pointing, simply keeping company, permission shaped like metal, simple and convincing. A neighbor passed and waved, the kind of greeting people give to steady presences. She waved back and listened to the river talk about movement without hurry. The key agreed by shining softly. On the way home, she stopped by a bakery from another season. The baker recognized her and said it had been a while. She carried home a small loaf that tasted like return. That evening, the second key reflected the lamp like a quiet bell. She wrote 3 words on a card and slid it into the mirror frame. Open small doors, then bigger doors open easier. The next morning began kinder, water before screens, light before noise. The second key stayed in her pocket during a difficult call. It made no promises. It reminded her she could choose pace. She declined one invitation that required abandoning herself. She accepted another that welcomed who she actually is. The second key liked these rooms better. The day liked her posture better. When doubt returned, she did not argue. She stood by the window and held the key until her breathing remembered how to be helpful. Doubt left quietly because nothing dramatic was needed. On a quiet Thursday, she found a tiny scratch along the second key, almost like a letter, almost like a timeline. She traced it and realized she was reading a map of practice. The map said begin where it is easy, stay until easy becomes natural, then add a half step. Doors respect momentum more than force. She smiled and wrote the sentence on a sticky note. She visited a friend and listened without fixing. The second key rested on the table between teacups. 2 keys now, one for the apartment and one for willingness, both part of the same ring. Her friend asked what changed. She said she stopped negotiating her right to move slowly. She stopped calling discomfort discipline. She started opening small doors until large ones noticed and copied the motion. That weekend, she sorted the hallway drawer that used to trap mornings. The second key opened the habit of leaving early for herself. The drawer no longer swallowed minutes. The house breathed easier. On Sunday, she carried the key during a walk and noticed signs mostly ordinary. A child laughing from a window, a leaf landing where it chose, a stranger offering directions gently, doors everywhere. She passed an old building with a faded directory. One name matched the tag date from years ago, a small studio on the 3rd floor. Her feet decided before fear could raise objections. The main door opened with the first key. The stairwell smelled like paint and memory. At the top, a narrow hallway waited. One door wore a handle that felt exactly like her palm. The second key touched the lock and turned with the softness of a conversation that is needed to happen. The door opened to a room filled with afternoon light and dust like floating punctuation. On the table sat a box labeled for her in her own script. Inside were pages from an earlier version, drafts of a life she almost began, letters to herself written with patient ink. She read until her shoulders dropped. None of the pages scolded, all of them invited. The second key rested on the table and looked almost ordinary now that it had performed its true job. The job was not opening this studio. It was opening her agreement with time. She left the room exactly as she found it except for one change. She took the first page home. At home, she placed the page near the mirror and the second key beside the lamp. She wrote 3 lines and slid them into the frame. Keep a simpler drawer, keep a kinder schedule. She set a reminder called Return Gently and placed the second key on the ring where she would see it each morning. The sound it made against the others became her morning bell. Weeks passed and the key grew familiar, not boring, beloved. Whenever she forgot, she held it again and remembered she could choose steps that fit. The door inside her waited and opened daily. People said she seemed lighter, not louder, simply less defended. She answered with a smile that knew its reasons. The second key flashed once in the lamplight and then returned to being quiet. She understood at last. The second key opened a lock disguised as haste. It opened a drawer disguised as obligation. It opened a door disguised as later. The hinge was permission all along. If you're holding a second key today, try it on timing, try it on kindness, try it on the next honest step. Doors respect the hands that move without violence against themselves. Thank you for being here with my vessel of light. If this story kept you company, like the video so the candle can travel farther, subscribe to my vessel of light. And tell me one word you want to open again. I will meet you here soon with another quiet, bright mystery. Until then, may your returns be gentle. May your beginnings be steady. And may the right doors recognize you by the sound of your steps.